unit and carried a larger pulley to drive a dynamo connected to a small 3V lamp. Introduced replacing discontinued number produced 1979 SE2A41191 to 1995, still in production. Minor variations in the type. Some sight glasses were secured by screws as opposed to two pop rivets. Some sight covers could be a silver, metal or brass. The SP4D version sported a dynamo and an additional extra large pulley, on the same shaft, using a standard flywheel. It had no reverse control lever. A Mamod SP5 stationary engine, SP5 MK1 and MK2. The SP5 was the top of the range engine when it was introduced. It had a longer boiler 6 in 2 in, 152 mm 51 mm, and a twin-cylinder engine unit with a reverse control. The engines could easily drive several workshops due to their bigger boiler and twin cylinders. The engine, like the SP4, had the exhaust to chimney with condensate collector at the base of the chimney. The engine unit, like the SP4, was mounted on a plinth, a possible throwback to the SE4 prototype of 1946. The crank webs had the word Mamod stamped into them like the old SE3 it replaced. The boiler was heated using a 3-tablet burner pan. A whistle was also included in the specification. The new model of SP5, MK2 1335, produced since 2000, has several differences from the MK1. The whole layout of this model has been changed. The positions of the components are in reverse. For example, the cylinder-songed chimney are now on the left-hand side. Also, the left-hand end of the crankshaft has the usual counterweight type of crank as on the SP5 MK1, SE3 twin and other engines, but the right-hand end of the new SP5 MK2's crankshaft has a more efficient and far more attractive crank disc for better balance and smoother running. Furthermore, this engine has one-piece cylinders, the bore being 8 mm, 5 forward/16 inch, and stroke 19 mm, 3/4 inch. The SP5D MK2 model comes fitted with a belt-driven dynamo and bulb holder, although a version without the dynamo is also available. 3. Introduced replacing discontinued number produced 1979 SE31985. A new version, the SP5 MK2 1335, was introduced in 2000.10,461, SP5 MK1. Minor variations in the type. Some sight glasses were secured by screws as opposed to pop rivets. Some sight covers could be silver or brass-colored metal. A version was also sold to Griffin and George, who distributed it to schools and educational purposes. These engines carried an extra G and G decal. A badged SP4 version can also be found. It was not silver soldered. A Mamod SP6 1338 stationary engine SP6. The single-cylinder SP6 1338 is one of the most powerful engines Mamod have produced, and is fitted with a piston valve and fixed cylinder rather than an oscillating cylinder. It uses the same boiler forward/burner unit as the SP5 MK2 1335, optionally fitted with a pressure gauge. The same engine block has been used on the larger mobile models. Originally introduced in 2006, production of this model is still ongoing. 4. Minor variations in the type. A limited edition version was made for Forest Classics round 2006. This engine featured a green base plate. SP7. A Mamod SP7 stationary engine. The twin-cylinder SP7 is the most powerful engine Mamod have produced and is like the SP6 in the range, but is fitted with twin cylinders. It uses the same boiler forward/burner unit as the SP6, fitted with a pressure gauge. The SP7 was introduced in 2009, and was available by special order only, but they stopped making them in 2018. SP8. The SP8 is Mamod's first beam engine. Introduced in 2013, it uses the same double-acting piston valve cylinder, as used in other recent models, which is mounted vertically under one end of the beam connected to it, using a simulated Watts linkage. The crankshaft and flywheel are mounted under the other end. The valve gear is controlled via a second smaller beam. The SP8 is offered with optional gaseous solid fuel burner. Now discontinued. Mamod miniature tools and line shaft details. A raised base Mamod line shaft with large rectangular decal. C 1958-65. Mamod workshop tools from C 1950 showing brass-wheeled hammer and punch as well as polisher and grinder. The company produced a range of model workshop equipment with either cast iron or die-cast metal bodies and bases designed tope compatible with Meccano, a half-inch, 12.7 mm, spacing. The range comprised SAD Smiley 5, model power press, later called power punch. Model power hammer, a trip hammer. Miniature polishing machine with two 1.25 in, 32 mm, inch felt polishing wheels. Miniature grinding machine with one fine and one medium 0.75 in, 19 mm, inch grinding wheels. Miniature line shaft enabling several models to be run at one time, fitted with 3 Meccano-compatible pulleys. The tools have featured in the Mamod range of steam toys since the company's inception in 1937. Very early tools featured simple flat bases with Meccano-spaced holes. These early tools also had Meccano-like pulleys, fitted with crudely made sand cast iron bodies. They continued after the war in the pre-war form until 1948 when, along with the SE1, SE2 and mm2 engines, the hammer and power punch, later power press, they were fitted with the new hot-stamped brass flywheels. At the same time Mullins engineers moved to Camden Street, Birmingham. With this move the company acquired some power presses, and the new brass wheeled tools, and polisher forward/grinder, began to get raised bases. The cast iron bodies for all the tools were replaced with Mazak around 1950. The pressing facilities also enabled the mm1 engine to be the first steam toy in the Mullins range to be produced with a raised base plate. Apart from the change from brass to Mazak flywheels in 1953 and the disappearance of oiling points by the 1960s, the tools changed very little over the years. By 1979 the tools had changed to a blue and red color scheme, replacing the green forward/red scheme you see on all the engines and tools up until then, in line with the new SP series of engines. Due to the financial situation, the tools, as separate items, disappeared from the range in the mid-1980s, along with the SP1, 3 and 5, but were together in the WS1 workshop introduced in 1979. Then, in the early 2000s, the individual tools reappeared. The Mamod line shaft history. The line shaft is the accessory that enables a steam engine to drive more than one tool. The line shaft first appeared back in 1936 when Geoffrey Mullins took on the task of making a set of engines for Hobbies of Dereham, after Geoffrey Bowman Jenkins left Bowman Models. The early line shafts all featured flat bases and, before the war, came in 2 models, the C1 and the C2. The former having 4 pulleys and the latter having 7. Both types of line shaft carried the Meccano-type red pulleys as well as turned brass types. The pedestal supports, like those of the early tools, were made from cast iron and the base plates were drilled Toffet Meccano. Production of the line shaft and the tools continued right up to the beginning of Second World War, and possibly into 1940. the line shaft by then being incorporated into the SC2, 3 and 4 engines. After the war, c. 1948, the line shaft gained brass pulleys as well as the hammer and punch. The flat base plate was retained but the C1 line shaft was dropped. By the mid-1980s the Mamod company was in trouble. The SP1, 3 and 5 were discontinued, along with the separate tools and line shaft, but all 5 components continued to be made as part of the WS Workshop. Mobile engine range 1961 to date. Mamod produces a wide range of models capable of moving under their own power. They are mainly generic representations of various vehicles that were often steam-powered in the past. Steamroller SR1 and SR10. A SR1 roller from c. 1965, it clearly shows the pop rivet construction. A Mamod SR1 a roller dating from 1973. The SR1 steamroller was Mamod's first mobile steam toy. It was introduced in January 1961, designed by Eric Mullins. The first rollers were unidirectional and only traveled in a forward direction, at an UN steamroller-like speed. The engines featured a modified MM2 steam unit complete with characteristic rolls made of aluminium alloy. Like the early Tier 1S of 1963 and the stationary range, the early SR1 rollers were of screwed-together construction and also featured a brass vaporizing lamp rivet to the scuttle. They had no towing hook. From 1963, a revised burner was used. As was introduced with the Tier 1 steam tractor, the handle of which formed a towing hook, although it would be 1969 before there was anything for it to tow, with the introduction of the AL1 open wagon and Pound 1 lumber wagon. From 1965 the roller was put together using pop rivets, like all the Mamod range of steam toys. As a result it is easy to distinguish early 1960s rollers from later ones. In 1967 the SR1 became the SR1A, with the introduction of a simple reversing mechanism on the engine unit. The mechanism was similar to the 1965 MEC1 Meccano engine. In the same way, the Tier 1 became a Tier 1A. In 1968 the aluminium rollers and wheels were replaced by Mazak items. The same material is used to this day. The roller has remained in the Mamod range for over 60 years now but has undergone small incremental changes over this time, with modifications to the burner, moving to solid fuel circa 1976, and sight glass. Boilers replacing the overflow plug type, circa 1978. The only other changes have been largely cosmetic paint, whistles, smoke box detailing. Early boxed SR1 engines now command strong prices and are sometimes referred to as nut and bolt SRs by collectors. Lately, other variations of roller have included limited editions in different colors as well as longer boiler versions and also a kit version. The 60th anniversary of the introduction of the SR1 was celebrated in 2021 with a limited production run of 60. Traction engine Tier 1 and Tier 1A. An early Mamod Tier 1 steam tractor from 1963. It clearly shows the nut and bolt constructions. The smooth canopy top was used for only a few months. A Mamod Tier 1 a traction engine with original packaging. This is the classic Mamod model and has been in production with minor updates and modifications for over 50 years. It is a model of a typical traction engine with a full-length canopy. The engine itself is an oscillating cylinder unit the same as the SR1 which is based on the old MM2 unit. The boiler are longer than that on the SR1 although it is the same volume internally. The front part is an empty void into which, in the earlier versions, the exhaust steam was fed through the choke. It controlled exiting steam, not the inlet steam. The Tier-1 differs from the Tier-1 in having a reversing lever to control the speed and direction of the model, initially used on the MEC-1 of 1965 and subsequently applied to the TE in 1967, whereas the Tier-1 was unidirectional only with an exhaust choke to control the speed. The TE-1 was claimed to cover a third of a mile in 10 minutes on a single filling. 5. Power is delivered to the back axle by means of a drive band running from a small pulley on the flywheel to the rim of one of the back wheels. This can be removed to allow the engine to run stationary or to drive a line shaft and tools. The front axle of the model is mounted on a central pivot with a simple copper stub spring, which provides a crude form of suspension. It is also steerable by means of a shaft running from the axle up inside the chimney. Later models post-67. Early models did not use the later control rod for steering but used a rod mounted directly into a hole in the early model square axle box. Both designs could be screwed down to lock the wheels in a fixed position. A control rod, with a wooden handle on top, can be attached to the top of this shaft to allow the operator to steer the model as it moves. The Tier-1 forward slasher has a green boiler. This green has varied over the years from apple green to a dark Brunswick green, similar to GWR locomotives, red spoked wheels and flywheel, a white forward/cream colored canopy and a black firebox /smokebox/chimney. It is also available in a distinctive alternative paint scheme, with a polished brass boiler and maroon wheels. Other limited edition models have been produced in the last decade using blue or black paintwork, as well as variations of the colors mentioned already. Steam Wagon SW1. The SW1 steam wagon is another variation of the SR forward/tail engines in the range and was first produced in 1972. The model is largely attributed to Steve Mullins, grandson of the founder of Mullins Engineers. Apparently Steve took his inspiration from a book entitled The Overtip Steam Road Wagon, published in 1971 and written by Maurice Kelly. The SW1 basically uses a mixture of components from the SR1 Arola and Tier-1 attraction engines, to which is attached a lorry-style rear body with a cab and payload bed. The extra length of body is supported on a C-section girder chassis. The engine has a double reduced drive using a large intermediate pulley, similar to the flywheel. This gives a more realistic speed as well as a blue SW1 wagon from 1988 and a green SW1 wagon from 1973. A 1988 blue SW1 steam wagon minus the body work, showing the double reduced drive and chassis. Affording the model more pulling power. A live rear axle, only one wheel is driven, has distinctive diamond-spoked wheels, closely based on a Foden design. The wagon is sometimes referred to as the Foden wagon. The model has red wheels and a blue, green or brown body, with a white quarter-length canopy over the engine and boiler. The model has details such as mudguards and an optional cargo of barrels. More recently, limited edition models have been made in a darker shade of green as well as blue.
Yes, the camcorder is out of power soon. Got to page 11. So I think that's now we have to continue tomorrow. We don't have enough power to continue this. Let's just start from here tomorrow. And the video splits in 30 seconds and I start to get tired. So I will just stop the camcorder and just continue tomorrow.